Jared Gordon versus Paddy Pimblett, guys. I know I'm not talking about the last one. I'm talking about the next one. Part 2, would you like to see it? Jared Gordon called for this fight last night, and wouldn't you know when he'd like to fight him? He'd like to fight him in March. Son of a bitch. What is going on with this piece of psychology? Every fight that we've ever discussed that isn't going to be this year is in March of next year. All of them. Everybody's fighting in March. All right, either way. This one really would need to be March because that's where they're going out to England. That's where we're rumored to have Leon Kamara trilogy fight. So that's what Gordon is saying. He's saying, look, I want the fight. I want the fight. And I feel I need it and it could help me. You don't want it as much. You don't need it and you don't see where it would help you. Real fair, Paddy, you have the leverage in this. So do me the favor, and then I will return by giving you every possible advantage, including coming to home soil. Look, that's not the world's greatest negotiation, but I'm sharing with you that is what happened. And wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't we like to see that happen for Gordon? That would be a bit of a feel-good moment, and you would have plenty of dialogue to move on. And nobody's talking about fighting Justin Gaethje. I apologize. Paddy Pimblett. Paddy doesn't call guys out, surprisingly, rather. I must say surprisingly, not oddly, because it is working for him. It's very hard to get attention missing some ingredients. He has no opponent. He has nobody we're looking forward to. He has no heat. He's got no rivalry. Soon with Mr. Hand Sanitizer. Aside. Mr. Hand Sanitizer, so moves a different weight class. The match just isn't going to happen. I like the idea. Son of a gun, I like the idea. Gordon versus Pimblett Part 2. I don't have to see it in England. I don't have to see it in March. But I do like that idea, and frankly, I don't have a better one. I mean, I don't predict this is the direction they're going to go, but if you wanted to go in that direction, somebody's going to have to suggest it. Gordon has now done his part. If I was to make a prediction for you, Paddy does not accept that. And I'm not implying Paddy's scared to redo that. I think Paddy's just ready to move on. He said something about he was hurt. And I tell you what, when you get away with one, even if it's by the skin of your teeth, you still got away with one. Move on. Why would you ever go back? Why would you ever return to the scene of the crime? I mean, right? That's what dreams are made of. You pull one off. Now, you know good and well you're going to have to give it back somewhere down the road, but I couldn't blame Paddy for that, but I just like the match. I don't have a better match. We don't have a fight that has been talked about post-fight more, at least not in a meaningful period of time. And guess what, guys? We're going to have another month of this. Then they will have the all-time record. If they can spill over into next week, they will have a massive bump. Nobody's talking about what's already happened. Well, except for that topic. And when I tell you we're going to have another month of it, it's because you've got this judging situation. What's going on with that, by the way? What judging situation do we have? I heard this broken down, and there was like some anger, and we all love to get mad at the administrators, right? Hey, me too. Me too. I mean, that's fun stuff. When you think you can know the rules better than the person assigned to know the rules, that's fun. You ever been to a football game where the ref gets it wrong? And you're screaming from the audience, and it's not because you think the ref can hear. You want people around you to know that you have the rule right, that you can do even better than him. I mean, there's something fun about that. That's realistic. That's within human nature. But what do we got on this? Because I've heard it argued a number of times, I'm just not quite connecting the dots. 3 judges had it for Paddy. 2 judges had it the exact same score for Paddy. Now, the juxtaposition here is that 25 ringside media also turned in their unofficial score, I guess just for fun, but 24 of them had it for Gordon. Only one of them had it for Paddy. And I guess that juxtaposition, really that's the ones that I've got to give it to. I've got to give it to those 25 media. Like, that's a really interesting number, 24-1. I get we're not doing scientific here, but that's an interesting number to be the opposite of all 3 judges. Sure it is. But what about the 15,000 people in attendance? I mean, generally we can count on them. I don't know how much we can ever count on the MMA media to do a goddamn thing. We're choosing to go to them on this one. That's fine. I won't give them a hard time. I'm just sharing with you what else in life have we ever said, let's go ask these 25. And we're calling them 25 because we don't know their names. We had 15,000 in attendance. They didn't boo the decision. I'm just sharing for you, like, where did this all come from? So I keep watching these interviews, and it ties in with Stotts. Stotts and Sabatello had fought the night before, and it was a 50-45 decision for Sabatello when the other two judges had it 48-47 and gave it to Stotts. Okay, fine. That fight is a mess to try to break down. It really is very difficult. You had 3 rounds that were extremely close. And you had 2 rounds that were not as extremely close, but those other 2 rounds are the ones that people aren't arguing. They're saying those should have gone to Sabatello. So the 2 rounds that should have gone to Sabatello did with one judge, and the 3 rounds that were extremely close, where everybody's going, man, that's a close round. So, all right. Right decision comes in, at least in our opinions. Stotts won that fight. Well, yeah, Stotts won the fight. Gave the championship, glory goes to Stotts. Sounds like we all got it right. Well, no. Here's the problem. There was an airplane caught. And I've read these articles 3 and 4 and 5 times, and I've heard people, and I heard the passion. I could never get upset at anybody who wanted a fair adjudication. And people that are giving a voice and they're yelling and they're screaming about this because they care about the sport. What do you think a judge did that worked a fight and traveled to another fight? What do you think he's getting paid? You think there was some level of attention for that? You think there's something fun or fancy about that? It's a terrible job. I mean, it's a terrible grind. It truly is a very difficult thing to do. So apparently when you want to talk about the world of people who care, apparently you got to give it to the judge. No, we're taking away from him. We're taking away. He should not have caught a plane. He should not have judged back-to-back fights. I must tell you, doing things back-to-back, daily doubles, working on the weekend, these are compliments. I've been giving them my whole life. Never once has anybody tried to use it as an insult. Jeremy Horn, you guys remember him? Jeremy Horn doesn't get enough credit. But Jeremy Horn would have weekends. Pre-commission. He would have weekends where he'd fight on Friday, jump in a car, go all night like a pro wrestler, and then have a match on Saturday as well. But it was awesome. We didn't give him a hard time. We complimented that. We commended that. A guy that wanted competition, a guy that would work on the weekends. At any rate, I do have to bring this in because as I read the story, the one constant that I have with everybody that I've heard from is something about that travel. Like we touch on the scores, but then we get off them pretty quickly. Then we come over to Paddy and Gordon should have won because these 24 guys, well, all 3 judges, all 3 had it for the same guy. I mean, right, like the argument starts to get a little bit weaker, and I have seen everybody default on this goddamn airplane. I just haven't heard it before. Well, jet lag or a night's sleep, or I don't know. I don't know. Do you have to be in a bed to sleep? I mean, I don't know. How much sleep does the guy have? What's actually required? Why could he not sleep on a 5-hour flight? I mean, there's just all sorts of things that lead to speculation, but that seems to be one constant. Where if you got everybody together and you just took the constant complaint, you use that as the divisible. Okay, you want to have a judge doing Friday and Saturday. That's all you would come to. That's the only common complaint. Is that a reasonable complaint, by the way? Guy can't work extra hard, be away from his family extra long, help this body while helping. If that's what you think, yeah. The answer is yeah. That's not the hill I'm going to die on. Is that a compromise we're all going to come to? And you one assignment a week? I mean, I'll listen. I think there's a fair argument. But why are we making it? You guys want to know something? You're not going to like this. You're not going to like this at all. And I'm not telling you that this is the way things should be, just so you know. I'm telling you this is the way things are. Let me use an extreme example, but it's one that you'll understand. Judges. When you're elected and or appointed to a judging position, it becomes a problem instantly that you try to adjudicate from the bench. And no matter how much you want to rise this person up and attempt to explain to them, it is so important that you follow and you give interpretation of the law. Don't make laws. They will do it every single day. Every day. This was a dumb law. This should have been fixed. This was an accident. This actually wasn't the intent of the law. I'm going to fix it right here. Bring the gavel down. They're going to do it every single day. You know what? There are some dumb laws. There are things that had a different intent. There are things that could be fixed. You do have a true victim here versus some prick that happened to read the book and can go and stick it to him. I mean, I'm not sharing for you that just across the board, I'm sharing with you that it is a piece of human psychology that goes all the way up to the federal bench. It goes all the way up to the Supreme Court's judges. It is nearly impossible to find a human that can get around that. So what you end up doing is you end up having officials that operate outside the box of their authorities. Give me a great example in wrestling. Stalling. In high school wrestling, what we call collegiate style, a stalling call is a massive part of that sport. Guys will win national championships on the stalling call. Guys will make it to the national finals, advance through tournaments on stalling calls, on multiple stalling calls. It's a piece of strategy. Okay. Stalling is supposed to be the exact same. That's the way it's written down in the rule book, and you could see why. But there is an unwritten rule. There is an unwritten rule that if two heavyweights are wrestling, they're both pushing on each other, right? If you back up, you're stalling. Just so you guys understand. You must stand your ground in wrestling or go forward. You cannot back up. Well, if one guy grabs a hold of you and he pushes you backwards, I got to call you for stalling? Well, what if you're trying to dig in there and this guy is stronger than you? That's not the intent of it. So there is an unwritten rule that all the referees have band together outside of the jurisdiction of the bodies that oversee wrestling. All the referees have band together. The unwritten rule is if two heavyweights are pushing and the bigger guy wins that push, you don't call them for stalling. And the referees in wrestling get together and they go, well, yeah, but that's the way the rules should be. That's what the people that make wrestling should have done. It's even what they would like to do. They just didn't know how to word it. They didn't know how to implement it. So it's an unwritten rule, and here's what we do. You know what? Everybody in wrestling supports that idea. And I'm only giving it to you as an example. Just like the federal judges or the referees within wrestling, there's unwritten rules and there's things that people do to protect themselves. George Masvidal versus Kamaru Usman. And I don't have to go back that far, guys. I can go back a week. It would just be a smaller fight. I'm going to go back to that fight because it's a big one that you watched and that you remember. That was 5-0, not even maybe, not even kinda. That was 5-0 Kamaru Usman. The end. And if you disagree, please raise your hand so that in the future we can remove you from credibility. But before you think you have to correct me, it was 4-1. How and why? That's absurd. Usman won the 5th round. Boy, I can keep on playing that game. And you want to know why you don't see 5-0? You want to know in those big fights why you don't see 3-1? You want to know why in the dirty, filthy sport of boxing, nobody can go and whip somebody else? I mean, in every other sport, you can blow somebody away. In boxing, you can never win 12-0. Ever. Ever. You're an undercard guy. That doesn't matter. You're the main event. You're the world champion. Floyd Mayweather will absolutely dominate you all night, and you're going to win a whole bunch of rounds against him. It can never be 12-0. Find me one example that you've ever heard. And don't go to the internet and go, tell me an example. But you don't know the why. The why, much like with an amateur wrestler, you have the two big guys pushing. The why is once a match is decided, you start giving rounds to the other guy. It's extremely common within judging. The judges you don't complain about. Now, you don't complain about them because they get the match right. The adjudication is the way that it's supposed to be. But all around you, you will see this. So let me just do the math for you. You have a 5-round contest. A guy wins the first 3 rounds. The math is done. It's over. There's only 2 rounds left. You just start giving rounds to the other guy. You hedge your bet. That way you don't have a 50-45. That way nobody's calling in, right? That judge, Mr. Airplane here, could have given Sabatello the fight 3 rounds to 2. The same decision that he had, but with a different score. The same decision. He could have done that 3 rounds to 2. He could have done what every other judge did to protect themselves. Not because it's right. Not because it's the interpretation, of which it absolutely is not. Not because you're assigned to talk about each one of these rounds and the math and the winner. That's somebody else. Here's my job. He went out and did his job. He didn't have to. He could have done what any other judge would have done, which is 3 rounds go to Sabatello, 4 and 5. I'm just going to give them to Stotts just to protect myself against something like this. He didn't do it. He called it straight. Called it the way that he saw it. Straight. The whole way through. And that one example I just gave you guys, I could go on and on and on and on. There are so many rules and protocols and procedures that we have in the sport that go into a category called unwritten rule. And they're not by the book. And everybody gets together and does them. Like it or don't like it. Break that story down. You got an airplane. When's the last time you thought you should disqualify somebody because he boarded an airplane?